there's this quote, it's the artist that paints, not the brush.
Welcome to V is for Victory, a podcast about how small businesses overcome big battles. I'm your host, Jill Miller of Vera Creative, a boutique marketing firm in the Chicagoland area where I'm also a part-time professor of an advertising course. Join me as I talk with entrepreneurs about the challenges they faced as well as their strategies for success. Okay, welcome everybody. V is for Victory. Today my special guest is Matt Banker, and Matt is the founder of Banker Creative. He is a lead strategist as well. And I just have to tell you, Matt, there's two reasons why you're on the show today. One, I saw that you went to UW Stout, and that is a hop, skip, and a jump away from where I grew up. And two, I was perusing through your posts on LinkedIn, and this spoke to my heart and made me so happy. You posted, this was like, I don't know, a while ago, but you posted, a new tech solution won't solve a strategy, process, or people problem. And I was like, the heavens have opened and the light shone down because I was like, oh, someone who thinks like me. So walk me through a little bit about, you can talk about your background if you want. I mean, you don't have to take us all the way back to your college days at UW, but talk to me about how that, not a lot of people think like that, right? Like that post. I feel like I run into people or I run into clients a lot that just don't, if you said that to them, they'd just be kind of like, well, what do you mean? So just walk me through your thoughts on that and why you posted that. Maybe you were posting it in regards to a particular situation, or maybe you don't even remember posting it.
Well, I do remember writing that. I sound smart, looking back at old posts. I think, well, part of it, I think I've discovered through experience. So I have a small team. We use a project management software called Monday.com. And we've reinvented it, like our boards and our systems and how we project manage 3 or 4 times. And each time we realized that the problem isn't that this technology is wrong. It's that we really needed to clarify what our actual processes were. And then on top of that, technology is great, but if people don't use the technology properly, then it doesn't really solve those problems either. And so this is me speaking maybe from insight, but not necessarily wisdom or experience, because I found as the owner, I'm kind of the last person often who abides by the specific processes, but I know it's what it means is it makes me the bottleneck because I'm not bought into like the way we've agreed to do things. So my brother works for me as well. I don't know if you're familiar with like the EOS system, but I'm more of the visionary. They have this idea that you have visionaries and integrators.
Oh yeah, okay.
So
okay. That's
the visionary, is like the idea person, the one who's coming up with, like pushing us in a new direction, the innovation, evolution, all that. And then the integrator is the one who like makes sure things happen, on the ground. They're like a chief operations officer is often that integrator role. So my brother is that. I'm the visionary. And I think it's maybe we work well together as siblings, but I think it's good because he can actually tell me, Matt, you're not following the process, or Matt, you need to buy into this. So, all that's a long way to say some of that post came out of personal experience and personal weakness as well. So like recognizing like what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. We can't apply technology to fix those things. Like you have to work on the people thing or the process thing, instead of just thinking this shiny object is going to solve everything. And I'm in marketing. So there's a new SaaS or new AI tool, literally like these days, it seems like literally every 15 minutes, there's a new AI tool that we should be implementing. But if you haven't done the like work of figuring out how to use it, it's actually not going to really help your business that much.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to go down the AI rabbit hole because I'm just, it annoys me. Like at first I was like, this is going to work me out of a job. Like people are just, because people already think they can do it themselves. Like you
Mm.
build websites. How many websites do you come across where like, yeah, I did this myself. And you're like, yeah, I can tell. You know?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, I kind of called out a client about this just yesterday, to be honest with you, because I asked him, I'm like, hey, are you using your CRM? Because he said it was weird. He said he's good at following up, but he's not good at booking like a follow-up appointment. And I'm like, well, the booking is in the follow-up. Those are one and the same. That should be in the same conversation, or shortly after. Like you said, whatever the process is deemed to be. But I said, well, are you using your CRM? And he was kind of like, no, I think I'm going to look into a new one. And I said, well, the CRM is only as good as the person who inputs the data, and that's
Right.
if you're not using it to its fullest capabilities, then it's you, it's not the program, right?
For
Oh
sure.
my gosh, I could totally quote Taylor Swift there. It's me. Hey, I'm the problem. Okay,
Yep.
sorry. I should
That's like the
never
mantra. I
sing
think
again.
that could probably be the mantra for every business owner who has a team. It's me, I'm the problem.
You are so correct on that. Yeah, you're like, what is with us business owners? Like getting in our own way, thinking we know
Mm.
everything, not wanting to outsource. I think it's a control thing.
I know it's a control thing for myself. And everybody needs control, I think, for different reasons. For me, I actually have, you mentioned Stout. I studied I studied art in college. So I have a fine arts degree. Specifically, my concentration was in conceptual installation sculpture, which is about as like heady and esoteric and non-commercially viable as you can get in the art world. I think there's like 3 people in the world that are making a real living, like doing that as art.
Shame on them for offering it as an actual degree course and taking your money.
Well, I
Like,
mean, I can get into it. There's a lot that I think I still use from the education, if not the like degree or the idea of what that degree might have done for me. But for me, the control was often around like the creative kind of quality control side of things.
okay.
I always wanted my fingers. Like
Yeah.
I have a tendency to want my fingers in everything. And I've realized that in a lot of cases, my opinion or my preference, it's not that it's better. It is different maybe than a designer or someone who's implementing it, but it's not that it's better. It's just that tends to be my preference. And so as a business owner, learning to set aside a little bit of that control, and also hire people that are better than you at things is really good. But the thing that I always say these days is running a business is only like 30% being good at the thing that you're good at. And then 70%, it's like internal work to figure out, what are your own insecurities about either leadership or sales or whatever it is, or it's learning things that you never expected that you needed to learn, what finances, writing proposals, setting up a project management system, all that kind of stuff is very much outside of why I started a business, but it turns out that it's a big part of running a business. At least that's what I found.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And somebody came on my podcast and said it best: is like your business only goes as far as your personal development goes, and that's so true. I think when business owners butt up against the resistance to introspect and change, or just take a look and take accountability for their shortcomings, that's when things get really hard for them and things stop working out. So I definitely think you're onto something there. You make me laugh because I have a degree in liberal arts. That's my undergrad degree. And I call it my degree in nothing. And everybody who's listened to the show has heard me say that before. It's my degree in nothing because it's like, literally the requirements for my degree were to take like a certain amount of credit hours of classes that were the 300 level. So there was a 300 level yoga class. And I took like every film class. Although like I will say there are some fascinating stories like about how, I can't believe I'm going down this rabbit hole, but like how Hitler made it look through cinematography that he was more popular than he was. And I think at a young age, that was kind of my first opening as like eye-opening experience of like, oh yeah, wow, this stuff could really be. It was my first experience to propaganda, I guess you could say, right? Like, wow, that's incredible. And now, now I'm a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, but I'm proud of that. So, but yeah, so that's it. That my degree in nothing. Now, then I was working in a physical therapy clinic, and they were going through a rebrand, and the director of the clinic, the owner, he let me come to the meetings at the marketing firm that was handling the rebrand. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to do marketing. And so I set out to find a marketing job, and everybody was like, okay, you need X amount of experience, or you need this degree, or you need, and I'm like, okay, well, I already have an undergrad. I'm not going to get another 4-year degree, so I'll just go to grad school. So I went to grad school and got my master's in integrated marketing communications. Now, what I have found, I'm assuming you're around my age. I'm 41.
I'm turning 41 later this month.
Yes. See, look at me. I feel like even back when I was looking for jobs, it was like everybody wanted that all-in-one person. They wanted the marketer, the graphic designer, the PR specialist. And I was like, those degrees are completely different. Like you can major in one and minor in another, but you're not going to be excellent at both. I've never worked with a graphic designer that's a stellar copywriter. I've had to edit taglines before for grammar mistakes and spelling mistakes, right? So it's like, so it kind of like drove me nuts. Like I get it from a company perspective because you're trying to save money by hiring that all-encompassing person. But what I find, and what I think you're saying to be true, is that nope. Hire the person that that specializes, that focuses, that can fill in the gaps, the things that you don't have that they can bring to the table.
Yeah, I think a typical marketer, and marketing's so broad these days. There's so many possibilities of how you can approach it, and a lot of companies, they think, oh, I just need to hire a marketer, and then the problem is
like a zillion views on TikTok because they hired a marketer, and you're like, no.
I think TikTok. most people have maybe 3 or 4 of the skills of a marketer of the like 15 or 20 that they could have, and a lot of businesses there's 2 things. I think one, they tailor their strategy to whatever their person happens to be able to do, or the person that they have.
Idea. Wow.
But yeah, I think we're often stuck with that, right? Like you have someone who knows Instagram, and so you're an accounting firm on Instagram. I work with a lot of accounting firms, and I'll just be honest, like your audience is on LinkedIn. It's not on Instagram. But if your niece is like a really great Instagrammer and you hire her to do your marketing, the strategy might not be super great.
Everybody's got a friend or a relative in marketing.
Yeah.
That's the other hurdle we run out into.
We do that, or we just hire someone and we ask them to do things that they're not good at either. Like that's the other mistake, is that you have an idea, we're going to do this strategy, and you're kind of locked into it, but you hire a person who is maybe they're great at graphic design, but you really need a writer. And you ask them to do the writing, and it doesn't work out very well because they don't feel super confident in that role if that's not what they love, and B, they might not be good at it. I have found, you mentioned like designers and writers. I have found some people who see themselves as one thing, and so they assume that they're bad at the other thing, or they never try it. And then occasionally they'll discover, oh, actually, I'm a better writer than I thought I was, or a writer who has, better, visual taste than they realized, but they don't have the background or the training, so they don't feel like they can sit well in that role.
Right. Well, but a good leader will bring that out in them and give them the opportunity to shine when appropriate, I think, as well. How do you have a lot of turnover then? How big is your team, and what have been some of the struggles with hiring? Do you use recruiters? How do you find your peeps?
Well, I also took a roundabout way to get into marketing. I graduated from college with this art degree. There were no conceptual installation art jobs available at that time
in
or
Wisconsin?
ever in Eau Claire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
you couldn't sculpt cheese statues.
yeah, I mean, I probably could have. I didn't specifically search in Indeed for that sort of job.
I see this as your retirement future.
Yeah, eventually I'll get back into it when I don't have to rely on it for money. But I drove a school bus. I worked at a sandwich shop. I was just doing random things. And then I ended up having a job opportunity overseas. And so I moved overseas and I actually worked for an international church for a little while. And then I started a coffee shop with a Chinese business partner briefly. And then I ended up teaching art for a little while. At an international school. And in all of my roles, I actually found that I was mostly drawn. I would have a title, but I was drawn to other things that had to do a little bit with communication, but often just like whatever was the big problem that I found. And so I started thinking when I eventually moved back to the States in about 2015, I wanted to be a consultant. Like that was the word that was in my mind. Like I wanted to go in and help businesses solve problems. And then I wanted to move on to another problem, right? Rather than, be the, installed in there. And that kind of led me into marketing. And when I started off, like you, I didn't have a background, a degree or really a resume in marketing. And I looked at marketing jobs and I realized, well, I can either start at like the bottom rung here at like, early 30s,
sales.
sales and things like that. And I'd be, my peers would be, 22-year-olds right out of college, or I could start my own company and like start at the, quote unquote top rung.
Yeah.
And so I went that route. So this is my long route to talk about hiring people. When I had started hiring, I was still pretty, I would say, unsure about what I was doing. I think I still lacked a bit of confidence. And so I ended up hiring mostly friends and family early on. And because of that, they trusted me as a person and were willing to kind of take a chance on working for me. And a lot of them have stuck around, which has been really good. But you asked about challenges. One of the things I found is it's also like, it's great to work with friends and family. And there's challenges. So, and we've talked about this on the team pretty openly, when COVID hit and we lost a whole bunch of our, like monthly retainer clients. I didn't have the heart to furlough people or let them go. And looking back on it, if I had maybe more of a like hardline business minded perspective on things, I probably would have, cut our team and had people go on unemployment and just, get the money from the government, which would have been probably fine. Honestly, I bet my team would have loved to just sit at home for a couple months.
I think a lot of people liked that.
But for me, there's a loyalty aspect as well. And I mean, going back to personal development, I don't know if it's better or worse, but there is, as a business owner, part of your responsibility is to ensure the longevity and stability of the business as a whole. Because if the business goes under, no one has a job. And that sometimes comes in conflict with hard conversations with people that you're close to as friends, talking to your employees about, maybe this isn't a good fit and looking for other ways to move on. And again, I kind of mentioned it with when you're hiring a marketer, but sometimes trying to fit a role around the person that you have rather than, have that person fit the role that you need as a business. So those have all been challenges and things that I've been working through kind of more recently, even with my team. And it's an area I think of like growing up as a business and figuring out some of these things. At this point, I'm actually very happy every time I hire someone who's not friend or family, because it does simplify things.
I'm branching out.
Yeah. So my team is small. The last thing is just we have, I think we have 7, including myself, on the team right now, and we've kind of intentionally stayed pretty small. And we work with some contractors as well outside of that.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm a one-man show and I'm going to stay that way.
Mm.
Just kind of part of that whole personality thing where, like I said, I don't want to rally the crew and have to motivate people. And, yeah, no. I think what I connected with you on too, through a lot of your LinkedIn content, is that you have the ability to take the problem and put it into the perfect short script of words. And so not only do you identify the problem and solve the problem, but the way that you label the problem, I think is interesting, because when you just said, a lot of people tried to build the role around the person. I was like, man, I'm thinking of one of my clients right now that is the exact problem. And the person was a friend. And it was a loyalty issue, and there was a lot of hard conversations and a lot of hurt feelings. And it was like, yep, this is exactly what's happening, is the friend was expecting the role to be built around what they wanted to do, not what was needed to be done. And so, so that, just the way you put that was so eloquent. And I think that's why I connect with a lot of your LinkedIn content. When did you realize you were such a good copywriter? Because you're doing a lot of the copy for websites.
Yeah, I do a lot of copy, and so I have a copywriter on my team, and we have sort of two roles. I like to say I take the complicated technical or complex language and make it short. And so a lot of business owners have trouble figuring out the headlines, the way to say things short. And there's a I don't know if it's actually Mark Twain, but there's a Mark Twain attributed quote where it's something like, if I had more time, I would write a shorter letter. And I feel like that's what a lot of businesses struggle with. So and I think of that kind of as messaging and headline writing.
I think they struggle to dumb it down a little bit, right? Like they're so in the thick of it, and they just assume everybody knows what they're talking about. And I don't know. I mean, my friend and I used to joke that you got to make it stupid simple. Like so simple, it's just stupid,
Yeah.
What I mean?
Yeah. And I found, like you said, business owners or leaders, they're so close to it. And honestly, part of it is that they're really smart, right? Like they're operating at a level 10 and their customers. So again, I work with a lot of accountants. Like they know when they say, what do they mean by the word? What's the difference between financials versus accounting? They're specific words. They have specific definitions in their head.
Yeah.
And none of us business owners know what the difference is. If they say advisory, they mean something really specific. And I just think it's someone to talk to about how to run your business and the money, so helping them understand your client has so much less knowledge than you do. You have to operate at a level 2 for them. And it's not because they're dumb. They're a lot the business owners are very smart in other areas, but you're the expert in your area. So that's what I do. I think that's always been in my other jobs, that's been a role that I think I'm good in meetings. I'm good at synthesizing things and going back to art education. A lot of what I was learning in art school was just how to communicate things. Like when you say it this way, or you show this image, it communicates a different idea. And so, I make complicated things simple. That's my job as my messaging consulting role and all that. My copywriter, he takes bullet points and simple ideas and makes them big, right? So he'll make it into an article. And I'm good at clarity, but I'm not a wordsmith, right? I don't have that. I don't think of myself as a person who comes up with the really super eloquent or flowery, flourish to the writing that makes it stand out. For me, it's all about simplify, make it as short as possible, make it as clear as possible. And in most cases, that's what you need, to be honest, for headlines and things. You don't need the clever title.
Yeah. Couple things about that. So I recently took an Instagram post and turned it into like a 4 or 5 page ebook.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is from that and
Making it big.
making it big. Yeah.
Yep.
But then, yeah, like you said, there's a time and a place to be short and sweet. I do a ton of e-newsletter writing, and, you got to get that subject line right. So,
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about communication, you're spot on with that. I teach at St. Xavier University,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an advertising course. It's advertising in marketing, so it's how advertising fits into the marketing, piece. But they offer it as part of the art department. It's actually an art course. I get a lot of business students who take it, or marketing majors who take it, but I also get a lot of art students who take it, and it's very, very good for them because they learn how to give presentations. I pair them with the business or the marketing majors, and they have to work together as a team to create an integrated marketing communications plan. This is exactly how it works when you get in the real world, where you're the designer and you're working with the copywriter, and and they come back and they tell me this. They're like, wow, I got a job doing XYZ, and it's just like your class. And thank you for that. So my class is really, really different, but definitely you can see the art students, you can see where they shine and why they're in that role. And then the same with the business students, but it's just fun to pair them together and let them feed off of each other and learn from each other, and really get those art students to be able to communicate, because at the end of the day, if they do go the studio art, direction, they're going to have to sell themselves. They're going to have to sell their art. They're going to have to communicate. You can't just be like, I want to know why. I like to know what somebody was thinking when they painted a certain something. There's a woman I follow on Instagram. I actually hired her to do a project for me. And she opens her Bible, and we'll read the Bible, and then we'll paint kind of based off of a verse that she read. And, so each painting has some very meaningful, feelings and thoughts, and, is provoked from a very deep within space. And I like that. I want to know that, right? I don't want somebody to try and sell me a piece and be like, well, what do you see? What does it mean to you? I'm like, no, wait. Artists
struggle so much. They want the work to speak for itself, and they don't want to have to sell it. Right. And and the ones that sometimes end up in marketing, they think about it in a similar way. Like, if it just looks pretty, then it'll do its job. But it's the same problem, actually. It's because designers and artists are operating at this like level 10 of how to understand and interpret visual language. But most people are interacting with it at a much different, lower level, not because they're dumb, but because they're smart in other areas. And so you're always translating for the masses in marketing rather than to your own like high level people.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure I've had students say it speaks for itself. And I'm like, nope. That's so perfect how you said that. Exactly. Okay. How did you end up figuring out, like, narrowing down your target market? So yes, your websites are for a lot of people, but you said in terms of more the marketing strategy, you're doing marketing for accounting firms. How did that evolve? And was it a hard decision to make? Or was there any fear of like, I'm going to run out of clients, or,
Yeah. Well, so my last name is Banker. And so there's there's no bankers in my family. It got changed, when my great great grandfather immigrated. I think the German word means benchmaker or something. So there's no financial people in our family in actuality, but my name's Banker. My company is called Banker Creative. And I think partially something that was happening was people were visiting, like they were seeing a list of a bunch of different agencies. And so I kept talking to accountants and like financial advisors. We worked with a bank at one point, insurance, other folks that kind of dealt with money. And so my first attempt to narrow down was like, oh, we'll just work with businesses that work with money. And what happened is we realized that actually what an accounting firm needs, so they're looking for like monthly business accounting clients. So it's a B2B service. And what a financial advisor needs, which is B2C, was so different that even though we had like identified a target market, it wasn't a good target market because the services weren't translating 100% one to the other. And also you can't go to a conference or go on a podcast or talk to like get a list of people who work with money. You can get accountants, you can go to an accounting conference, you can go to a financial planning conference, but I had to pick one. And at the end of the day, actually, I decided it was a little bit arbitrary because I don't have an accounting background either, but we had great clients in that space. And I realized that my skills really fit a hole that a lot of these accounting firms were missing. They're very logical, technical,
boring.
They're boring except for at their conferences. And I was surprised at how
they get rowdy.
They let loose a little bit. Yeah, so it was a good match because it was complementary skills, right?
Yeah.
And what I had, they needed.
I was going to say, you probably asked the same questions the target market asked because you weren't as educated in accounting, right?
Yeah.
And so by asking those questions, now you know how to talk to your target, right? Because you have the same questions that they do. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in marketing and you're working with almost any industry, I think a great line that you can use is if they ask like, oh, do you have experience working with our types of companies? You can say, no, I don't. Actually, that's really good though, because I'm playing the role of your customers who also don't know much about your industry. And so my job is to help you like communicate in a way that makes sense to people like me, not people that are like you, because those aren't your customers.
It's not even a line. It's the truth.
Yeah, well, it is the truth. Yeah.
Like you're not pulling the wool over their eyes on that one.
No.
Like that's a very valid point. And the other thing, like I'm sure you were like, ooh, financial advisors, compliance, and like the other way, like because I have a close friend and she's a financial advisor and I've tried to help her with some things and it's just it's hard. I mean, it is hard, and anybody who can build that business is kudos to them. I couldn't.
Yeah. Well, another piece of that too is that I found that we weren't a really great fit for personal brands. And some people are. I know a lot of marketers who are great with working with personal brands like you.
I'm doing the finger point like Blake Shelton.
Yeah. Well, and I was finding that accounting firms and B2B businesses, they were more interested in the best practices in ROI because there was a separation between the person and the brand. And when you have a personal brand, it's you, like you're representing yourself and it is very personal. And so you have like a lot of your own preferences come into that conversation. And we were just finding that, this is going to sound a little pejorative, but they were really needy in a way that I was not like wanting to work with at the same level. And so I'd rather pass those on to the people who really like can do a great job with that. And so you asked if it was a hard decision. It was a hard decision, so I copped out and I didn't make the hard decision. Instead of deciding we're just going to have, a narrow niche, what I ended up doing is I actually split my company in half.
Oh, that's how that happened. Okay.
Yeah. So I have one brand called Benchmark Growth, which is marketing for accounting firms. Literally the website is marketingforaccountingfirms.com. So it's very easy to know like what that does. And then the other side, which stuck around as Banker Creative is web design. And we use, I don't know if you're very familiar with StoryBrand.
Yeah. That's all over your IG. But and no, I haven't read the book, but I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah. So the reason we actually kept it was we ranked really well in SEO for some very specific terms around StoryBrand. And so we had a lot of random, all kinds of businesses looking for a StoryBrand website. And so we weren't ready to shut that faucet of leads off. But we knew there wasn't really the growth opportunity by having such really being tied specifically to another company's brand. We wanted to grow somewhere. And so the accounting firm thing was really where I felt like the opportunity was.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's been kind of my hesitation. One client recently told me, like, you need to focus on this visionary piece, right? This is what you're good at, and this is how you are going to communicate to what you do, because you do so much that people don't know what you do. And my hesitation with that is, I don't want to work for I don't want to be producing the same content over and over again. If all I do is healthcare, I'm going to run out of frickin' healthcare post to post, right? Like I've had a real estate client for 8 years, 9 years. We've blogged almost every month for those 8, 9 years. They're in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. So, like the blog, the newsletter, that stuff works up there. But I can't take on another real estate client. And yes, I could recycle material, but there's something about my type A personality and again, going back to that loyalty piece, like I feel like I'm cheating. I'm like, oh, this is wrong. Like, no, I've already used this for another client. I don't know, not to say that that's not, most ideas out there are a recycling of somebody else's ideas, but that's kind of where I am right now with my business, where it's like, I can see where they're coming from, because the relationship that I have with my newest client is great. He's the visionary. He's got the ideas for days, but not the tenacity to see them through. I can't talk today. Through to fruition. And but then again, like, I also work very well with, and I don't even know what she is, but, like the gym owner in Wisconsin, my best friend who owns a gym. We work very well together too, because she doesn't like the writing piece. She can't, she tells me, like, this is what I need, make it sound pretty. This is what I need, make it look good. Right. And because I know her so well, it's always very on brand, I will write things and people will write back to her as if it came from her. And it's like, no, I didn't do that. Jill did that, because it mirrors her so well. And I think that's kind of another thing I'm good at, is I'm good at mirroring my client's tone.
Yeah. If I went back and had like a solo practice, I think I'd be more open to working with different types of clients. What I was finding was, it was really when I was kind of reinventing, like I love the problem solving, but when we were bringing on new clients, I was always the bottleneck for the team. And so they needed me to be the strategist to figure out what does each of these clients need, and almost to invent the process for the other people to implement. I really did actually go. I specifically said to myself, I'm going to make my business more boring, because I knew, like, that was a part that was hard for me. I liked the different, and so, like, in order to niche, I had to get that in my head of, like, yes, this is going to be more boring in some ways, but it's more scalable because I can create things that other people can implement, the next time.
Right. So now, are your clients now, obviously for websites, that's a quicker turnover, or you keep them on to do their maintenance and whatnot? Do you do their Google Analytics? You do, like, keep them on for that kind of work, or what does that look like versus the accounting firms? I think those are monthly clients still, right? That you're continually executing marketing campaigns for.
Yeah. So when a client comes in for a website, we actually always contract out we bring in a strategist / copywriter. So that comes from part of the community of people who are connected with StoryBrand. So we always bring someone in as the messaging, what I do for the accounting firms, like the messaging person. And then they help write the website. My team designs, builds, launches, supports a website. But then anything beyond that they need for marketing, we say, go back to that messaging strategist. And so we'll refer them out, if they need local SEO, or they need Google Ads management, things like that.
Yeah.
We can help connect them to people. But, part of that was I actually didn't want to be responsible for all of those relationships because we were doing a lot of, projects. And then what would happen is 2 years later, a client who we did a website would need something, and they always needed me as the business owner because that's the person that they like were connected to. It was kind of a strategy question. And I found that we were having this problem where the revenue was like project by project by project, but the responsibility on the back end, we had all these past clients who would need just a little bit of time every once in a while, but it became too much for me personally to really manage. And so I wanted to connect them with someone who could take care of them better for the long term.
So talk to me a little bit about like how you've learned, because as a business owner, things come up and you're like, oh man, I guess I need to address that up front now, right? Like you learn all these lessons along the way that you're like, well, shit, I should have said that from the beginning, right? Like I should have made that clearer, because to me that was obvious, because again, you're operating at that 10 of service provider client relationship, and you get it, right? And you get that like, wait a minute, don't ask him for this whole lot. Like, here's what happens to me all the time. People have multiple brands, and so they hire me monthly to work for one brand, and then slowly they start asking me to do these other things for these other brands. But it's like, but listen, you generate a separate revenue from that brand, so should I. Right. Like you can't, you know what I mean? So like that's like been one of my biggest lessons.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, maybe you remember a time when you had a similar experience.
Well, again, that was part of why we split the company in half, was because we would launch these websites, and then we were the only people these companies knew that did any marketing. And so they would come back to us for everything, like anything having to do with any marketing. And it was just, it wasn't, we weren't able to make money off of that. Not enough, because we couldn't hire a specialist because we never knew what these clients would need. So that was part of it. So some of it was really clarifying what we do and what we don't do. And so just when we got to the point where we said, we just do the websites, we'll support the website, we can help you update it, but if you need anything beyond that, we're going to refer it out, and drawing a harder line. And that's tough sometimes, to leave money on the table when someone's like, I will pay you to do this, and we say, well, we don't do that. That can be hard, but that was really helpful for us. When it comes to that scope stuff, the other thing is, as we developed better processes, and really established this is how we work, and tried to really, we the clients that we work with, we sort of force them to work within our system. And so one of our core values, we say, is be the guide. And what that means is we are experts, not order takers. And so when a client comes to us, our goal is not to create something that they say, I like it. Our job is to create something where they say, oh, of course. So we're in the position of helping them understand what they need to do and why, so that it's less about, because, business owners like me, probably like you, I don't know about you, we have a tendency to chase shiny objects, right? Yeah. And so I was always getting these business owners who would be like, oh, hey, I know we're in the middle of this website project. What if we add this page, or what if we add this functionality, or whatever else? And so part of our goal is to come back and say, all right, what are we trying to do here? Does that really help us accomplish the goal that we established up front? Or is that extra? And it's not that you can't have it, but it doesn't fit within the scope right now. We could revisit it once we complete the stuff that we've already agreed to do. So really positioning ourselves as, and not in like an asshole sort of way, but like we know best, is the goal. Yeah. And people want that, I think. Right. But they forget. Sometimes they forget. And it's hard, I think, over time with clients. It's easy to shift out of that role of like guide and expert into the vendor order taker role. And so as a marketer, like guarding that in your relationship with your client is really important.
Oh, that's so spot on. Yeah. That's a really good point that you make. And I think here's the other thing where I struggle a lot of times is the client doesn't know what they need, and you take that initial call or meeting and you're trying to figure out what they need, and you got to throw a number at it before you really know what they need. And then you get in the thick of things.
That's
and you're
true.
like, well, crap, you have a lot more needs than I thought. But I also am the type of person that doesn't like, like I just sent out like scope of work for a project that's just direct mail. But there's no reason why we can't take that same design and run a Facebook ad, because it's just going to add more visibility. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I saw this in my mailbox. Now I'm seeing it on Facebook. Right. So it's like, and at what point am I doing them a disservice by not just formatting it? It's a simple size change. You know what I mean? And I think this, if we move forward with this client, then he'll do that on his own. I won't have to be the person that runs the ads, because I don't do Facebook advertising. I actually hate social media, and all my listeners know how much I hate social media. Go to my Instagram today. Well, this won't air today, but I have a lion roaring, and my caption is me complaining about social media.
And so many, I feel like so many business owners feel that way. There's something about social media that actually feels really
icky.
I mean, icky, yeah. I mean, you and I, we're both in marketing. I think business owners would be surprised sometimes at how skeptical marketers are about like the work that they're doing. And
and it almost makes the marketer lose credibility in the eyes of the business owner. That's what I feel like. They're like, what? Oh, you don't do social media? Well, like, what kind of marketer are you then? Because because in the business owner's head, that's where you got to be. And just like you said, no, you don't. You have to be where your target market is. And believe it or not, your target market might not be on Instagram, and it might not be on Facebook, or it might not be on TikTok. So why are you wasting your time?
Yeah. And you got to find, you have to find where they are and a way to do it that works for you, or you have to find someone who can do it authentically for you. That could be an in-house person or another person. But I think a big motivator, like throughout my career in marketing, the big changes have all come when I've recognized my own frustration and dissatisfaction with something in marketing. So early on, I was designing websites. I have this art background. They looked really nice. But I kept going into these meetings and I would ask my clients, well, what do you want your website to say? Just, give me the content and we'll make something that looks really great. And I realized they don't know. They don't know what the website should say. And so they're just guessing. And a lot of times they'd end up just copying and pasting from whatever was on the old website. And so it looks nicer, but it didn't really make a difference. And that I felt really frustrated that good looking websites weren't actually resulting in good results for them. And that's when I started really focusing on the copy and the messaging and learning different frameworks that would help me. So I could go to the client and say, this is what your website should say, and here's why. And they would be like, oh, thank you. We've been trying to figure this out for years, and you're able to help us clarify. And it makes so much sense.
I love that, because I think what happens for me too, is I come across people who hired marketers and they paid them and they didn't do anything. Or like, I've unfortunately have been in on projects with web designers who never finished the job. They're like notorious for falling off the map. I mean, they just like, or it's just like the amount of time it takes is like, are you kidding me? Come on. Like, part of it is how fast does the client get you what you need? But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of crappy service providers out there. So a lot of times, I definitely tend to over deliver. And I feel like it's like me compensating for all the people in my industry who just suck.
Yeah.
There
is. And we as marketers you can recognize that, like in different service providers. Business owners have a hard time deciding like who the right fit is. And one of the pieces of advice I give to them is you want to make sure that you have the right size marketing partner, because like two things happen. So if you go with the cheapest option out there, like you said, a lot of these little either freelancers or tiny agencies,
it's a side hustle.
It's a side hustle, and they'll disappear, and they can't really fulfill what you need.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, if you stretch your budget to the limit and you
Mm-hmm.
go with the biggest company that you can, you don't want to be the smallest client for a big agency.
Right.
Even if you see their portfolio and it's like this amazing work. Yeah. If you're not profitable and like a good revenue driver for them as a company, it's very difficult, not because they're bad guys, but it's difficult for them to prioritize you as a client. And so you're going to feel like this is so expensive for me, but you feel like you're treated like so, like, you know, lowest priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to get in that Goldilocks zone of, you know, we don't want to be the smallest client for an agency. You don't want to be the smallest client for an agency. You may not want to be the biggest client for an agency. You want to be, if you can be in that like middle zone, you get the good attention, the best work, but the price is going to match too, right? Like you can't be, if you're a $10 million a year company and you're looking for the $2,000 website designer, like that doesn't match who you are as a business, and you're not gonna get something that you're gonna be happy with, I think.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I've got just one more question for you before we probably wrap up.
Yeah.
Do you get that people have done any sort of research or are prepared for the prices you quote them, or are they kind of shocked like, whoa, okay, I'm going to use this example, and I think I used it before. She was like a massage therapist or something. She'd been in business for 10 years. And she was referred to me, and all my business is pretty much based off referrals. She was referred to me, and so we got on, and she's like, well, I need a website. I've never had a website. I've never had a logo. I have this Facebook page. It hasn't been updated. I go to it in like a year, right? And so I think I quoted her for the website, the logo, to set up like a newsletter or something like that for her. Not a lot of money, maybe $3,000. Okay. Maybe.
Yep.
And she was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it would cost that much.
Yeah.
And I was like, good luck finding someone who'll do it for less. And,
right.
you know, and I obviously didn't take her on as a client. And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, that is a lot of work for not a lot of money. I should have, you know, but it's just like, it was incredible to me because it's like, how have you been in business for 10 years and you don't even know that that's like a wow price?
Yeah,
you know?
It is. So there's two things that I do. I don't know about, I think people do research. In fact, one of my like core beliefs is when people land on a website, one of the top questions that they have is how much is this going to cost? Yeah. And so we're very upfront with our pricing. I don't believe that you have to list pricing, because if your answer is, when someone asks like, how much is it going to cost? And your answer is, it depends, which is usually the case, you could still answer the question of like, what does it depend on? And you can say, hey, you know, do you need a website? Is it like a 10-page website, or is it like a 40-page website? Do you need a logo? Do you need, you know, and these are some of the things, and you can start to give people ranges. I found when I started listing my prices, I got fewer calls. I'm talking to fewer prospects, but almost all of them had looked at the pricing beforehand. Yeah. And so that was not a surprise. So that was one important thing. The other thing was, this is more for the accounting firm clients, is making sure to understand the value that you're bringing and help them do like expectation setting. So for accounting firms, a lot of them grow by acquiring other small firms. And they'll go out and they will buy another firm for 1 to 1.5 times annual revenue. And so essentially what that boils down to is, if this other accounting firm like averages $6,000 a year for per client, you know, you multiply that by the number of clients they have, that's what they'll buy them for. So I started talking with accounting firm owners and said, like, how much is it worth it to you to acquire a new client? Now, if they acquired a firm, they're going to spend $6,000 to $9,000 to acquire a new client from this other firm. Right. But when it comes to marketing, they're like, I want to spend $500 a month, and I'm looking for, you know, 24 leads or 24 closed new business this year. And so expectation saying like, okay, well, if like a number that makes sense is, you know, would you pay $3,000 for a new client? they'll say, yes. I said, okay, now we can have a conversation about your budget. We're going to take 3,000 times the number of clients that are your goal. And because that's just more realistic. And I was able to tie it though to a number that already made sense to them. Right. And so it's the same. It's different equations in different industries, but the more you can tie it to like, what's a client worth to you? Like that's where we want to have that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. See, you learned in your art degree. A lot of very business savvy. I'm not picking on your art degree, really. No, I'm not.
I'll just say, yeah, UW Stout really does have a great art department. It's surprising, it's known as a polytechnic school, so people think of it as like construction and packaging and things like that. Their art department is really solid. And I know we got to wrap up. Here's what I'm going to say. Some people need a really linear path through college that is like degree to internship to job, right? Yes, and it's a personality. Yes. I think there are other people who can study almost anything and they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure out another job. Yeah. But you got to know who you are, or if you've got a kid, you got to know like who they are and guide them in that direction. You can kind of tell the even if they're not going to start their own business, a little bit of that entrepreneurial mindset. Mm-hmm. I think you can study whatever you want and you're going to figure it out. But some personalities are like, I need to go to school to get a particular degree that's going to get me a particular job. And that's what I want to do. Yeah, for sure. That's great for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're so right about that. You're so right about that. Okay, here's your soapbox. What do you want to tell the world? Get up on the soapbox. What's the one thing you want the world to know today?
The soapbox. That I want the world to know. I should have been prepared for this sort of question.
Oh, no, I like it organic. It's so much better. Don't worry about dead air. We can cut that out.
Okay.
As long as you need.
Yeah, let me think what I'm most interested in right now. I mean, I know you said you didn't want to go down the AI path, but that's the thing that I've been thinking about
It's a hot topic, so let's hear it.
All right. Well, so there's this quote. It's the artist that paints, not the brush, right? And there's a lot of conversation right now, and there's a lot of fear, even on, in our industry, on my team, copywriters, designers, like, oh no, is this going to replace our jobs? And I'm more worried actually for the SEO folks out there. I do think AI is maybe going to really revolutionize Google search and things like that. But on the creative writing side, it's going to be a really fascinating tool. And my belief is really that creative people using AI are going to be replacing creative people without AI. But it's not about like these tools completely replacing those folks. The ability to make choices and that discernment, even taste, right? Like artists and creatives have good taste to be able to decide what's good and what's not. That's not something that AI is very good at. And it's not something that non-creatives who are using AI are very good at either. So, there's really a place. So that's the thing we've really been thinking about, how to use it as a tool to amplify or like improve the work that we're doing, not as something like, hey, we're gonna replace every copywriter with ChatGPT or something like that.
Hey, it writes some good stuff. I've seen it. Where can people find you, Matt?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the main place. You can check out bankercreative.com or marketingforaccountingfirms.com. If you're an accountant, you should definitely get on my email newsletter at my website there. But LinkedIn, that's where I like you said, I post a lot of thoughts there, and it's kind of where I work out a lot of my own thinking about creativity and business and all of that. So Matt Banker on LinkedIn.
Great. I will link those in the episode notes. Matt, it's been a really big pleasure to talk to you. That hour flew by.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Easy breezy. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks for having me.